Hi, welcome back, all of you, to a very interesting and very differentiated lesson. We're going to talk about of a day of life of an AWS architect. I would want to bring multi-dimensional view into this so that you, as an aspiring architect or an existing architect, could really align well into this new world of work. Number one, basically, architect job. I think we spoke about this. Who is a AWS architect earlier? I don't want to repeat that. It's a blend of strategy because somebody who has to blend the strategy with problem solving, deep technical work because you need to really know the technologies and solutions and services, and you need to constantly collaborate with people because only when you ask the right questions, we saw that in the well architected framework, there are a lot of questions to be asked, collaborated, debated, etc. So what happens in a typical day of life, and then we see some perspective. Number one is what happens is like you could have meeting with your engineering teams, product managers, DevOps or SRE and data and security to check on what is the workload, migrations, features, blockers, decisions you have to make as an architect. That could be something like a stand up, what you do almost every day. I think when I used to be an architect, we used to do it on the cloud. But most probably, your key job role should be about designing the architecture, right? So reviewing the proposals which is coming, it might be an RFP or it's an RFI, refining the cloud diagrams which we spoke about, it could be applying the well architected framework, validating a lot of things like security, scalability, and choosing the right services, because that's one thing very important. Like for example, if I have to select between Lambda or a Fargate or a DynamoDB or Aurora, what is the trade-offs? This is something which very important you should look at. Most probably you'll be meeting the customers, meeting the business stakeholders, you look at the requirements, you look at the constraints, options, trade-offs. That's another very, very important area. So one of the things which you might miss out in the typical philosophical way of thinking is about you have to keep yourself updated. So we wait for reInvent to see what are the new things which are released from AWS every year or every 3 months, every 6 months. Look at the launches, look at the security bulletin, look at the best practice, look at the reference architectures, look at the cost updates, new instant types, so that you really know that you can fine tune the product. Okay, and one of the very, very normal thing is to build a lot of proof of concept. You spin up the environment, you test the new architectures, you benchmark the services, you experiment with the new services, you validate. Okay, and personally, I have done a lot of security and cost review with customers. So we might do a simple IAM boundary checks, encryptions. It could be about performance tuning, etc. One of the job role also will be involving high level architecture diagrams, sequence flow, landing zones, RFCs for design decisions, etc. Not the least, you will be mentoring the junior team, you will be reviewing your troubleshooting, reviewing pull request. Okay, you'll be mentoring the junior engineers, etc. And finally, you'll have to update this in a process like maybe the Jira or a notes or a next day priorities, etc. So in a nutshell, if I have to just give you a quick summary, this is perspective number one, right? So let me share my screen and then show you some of the summaries we can do. So an AWS architect you can think about is a kind of a problem solver, okay, a system thinker. I don't have to use the AWS. I think generally an architect should be a translator between business and engineering, a guardian for the security and cost, also a designer of a scalable, resilient system. And every day is different, fast paced, impactful. So, if you really constantly see the perspective number one, which I was trying to tell, is about a personality, is about like somebody you must feel that you're comfortable on the change, comfortable on the continuous, overall knowledge on multiple things, big thinking, basically deep dive into the technologies. This is what is expected out of a ace architect. Perspective number two is like in a typical day of life, you have to understand that your architects may not really go through a very structured approach. So I have to really think about this way. So every time a project comes, an architect might start by looking at customer case study. This is typically the perspective number two. you might want to really read. Now, this might be reserved for people who are from the business side. I really debate that very much, that this should be seen by somebody like an architect really well, because he really knows what are the customers trying to do with AWS. Okay, now customer success stories makes sense because it's going to talk to architect in terms of who are the customers who are doing already. When he's having conversation, this is a great. So always, at least I'm talking about what I do. I read maybe dozens or one or two case studies every day. You find thousands of case studies available. Look at your workload. Keep practicing to understand the business problem and how it was solved. Second part is, as I told you, is about the solution library. So if you are an architect, you have to really know, and this I'm talking typically from a perspective of uh, AWS. There is the solution library where there are a lot of this reusable solution on every industry, every cross industry, on different technologies, different type of organizations. You could browse this, and you must be able to really understand that these are reusable solutions, which typically, so in a typical project coming in, um, this is more than day of life. A typical how a life of an architect is planned in general is like he always goes through the customer success stories. He looks at the solution library. Typically, then he looks at the prescriptive guidance, basically, which is very, very important to get a perspective about strategies, best practice tools, etc., which might be really useful. Okay, and from this tool, it might be the well architected framework. I think the architecture center is a better word to really look at, where everything is linked as one unit. So if you really see here from the architect center, you will be able to just get your design diagrams. So when you come here, you can filter these thing by browsing the content. So you can filter this by content type. And you should understand these content types are very useful because they're all part of architect center. Decision guides, guidance, patterns, reference architecture, solutions, technical guide, videos, white papers. Very, very important. And then there's also one more perspective to this filtering in terms of telling the methodology. What kind of methodology are you using? Are you using a well architected framework or using a CAF framework? Okay, typically you can go through it. So this is another area. Now you have to really look at just-in-time linkages of this, of knowing these documentation exist. Every time there's a project, are you aware there's a customer case studies available? Are you aware there are solution library available? Or there are prescriptive guidance you've gone through the design framework, development guidelines, reference. So don't really work on anything until you're feeling that this is available. So one more important piece of documentation is quite a hands-on person. So you might have tried a lot of things here. So there are a lot of these architect kind of applications workshops which are available in the AWS workshops. Now, pretty much this is basically to get an architect is aware that how to show something for the customers quickly. There are a lot of architects who conduct workshop through this workshop.aws, which is hosted by AWS. Sometimes you can take the script and also try to look at how you can fine tune this for your projects. One important thing is to really look at it from the console perspective. There are various tools within the console, which is of a lot of value to the architects. So one of some of the tools which I want to list, one of the tool is definitely the well architected framework tool, which is useful. Trusted advisor is another tool which is closely linked to the well architected tool, because it also provides you the performance, improve security, reduce cost. Okay, this helps you a lot. Overall, trying to understand what are the various services available, is a breadth of services available from AWS is absolutely very, very important. So that is the reason that when you look at the profiles, you cannot, when you see any of the diagrams, let's take one example of a reference architecture of something like a connected um lodging properties. Okay, and then let's see whether there's a diagram available here. Yes, it's here. And suppose this is the diagram. And if you really look at this diagram, typically an architect must have drawn this with a lot of understanding of the different hotel property. Maybe a hotel has got a room, it got a lobby, public restroom, driveway, and all these places are made smart by plugging in some kind of a devices, and then there is the data which is coming into the IoT green grass through the protocols, through the device. Okay, and then you're trying to look at moving this into the IoT core, from where the events, basically the asynchronous and synchronous events, can come out of this particular core, and then you can notify, basically you can notify through the SNS, through an SMS or email. Okay, there's no point trying to notify. You also pull the analytics through a dashboard, through the quick site, which can be really pulled by any of the front end applications. You can also get the streamed data which is coming in continuously into a Lambda functions and store it to DynamoDB and push it to the applications. The reason why I'm trying to show here is from the architect perspective, he has to know so many services. So if he has a handicap of being very, very picky in terms of telling, I only know this, I only know that, the recommendation, if you want to really stand very long as an architect, is to, if you look at GCP or Azure, you'll find 200, 250 services which are very core in nature. If you can find some way to get three liners into 100, 150x and 100 service which you really know well, that's a great strategy. So it's basically to really look at when a customer requirement comes, you start relating to the services quickly, and then you can know more about it at the real time. Okay, so it's very important for you to get an overall feel of the service. So hence, apart from knowing some of the tools which are meant for architects, it's always good to really know all the services which are related to AWS or Azure or GCP, whichever area. And this stage we are talking about only Amazon Web Service. One last thing is also about the marketplace, because sometimes you forget the solutions are also available in the marketplace. Okay, and if you really understand what the marketplace is all about, for people who are have no much knowledge about that, I just want to relate it that it is a place where you can go and really look at. Let's go there first. One second. Okay, where you can just look at solutions, like for example the solutions of all categories are there, but you also see that some of these solutions are also relevant to architecture. Okay, for example, if you want to, let's take a very simple example. If you want to draw a design diagram, you may not find a direct tool like Visio from AWS. You must know which tool to use. Similarly, when I tell AWS well architected, yes, the well architected solutions are available, but you'll also find some partner solutions which are available from customers, which you can really use, like Six Pillars as Asecure, to really implement things a little more faster because as a specific requirement is coming up. Similarly, if you go into migration space, you will find definitely a lot of accelerators available on migration space. You can use the solution accelerator. We spoke about the design pattern like a strangler pattern. All these services you can really use. The idea is marketplace is a place where while you're trying to size and solution your thing for your end customers, the more you know the widespread buffet available for you to really tell customers, it's better, because you have to pick the right service. Picking the right technologies like serverless is your stage one. Stage two is look at if a partner has got a superior solution which is running at the plumbing runtime with AWS, but it is a superior solution, you must be able to recommend that. So looking at these solutions, looking at what is available for every element is of really, really high value. This is again coming from my experience on the ground. Go for it in case you're looking at any partner solutions. Okay, and last tip for me in a typical day of life is about nothing, as I told you, like characteristics is very easy to define, it's very continuous change making, there are tools available. There is also something which is very important about you trying to think this from an operations perspective. So generally operational persons typically do continuous monitoring of the solutions, because a lot of these SRs, which you see, like if I really go into config tools, like some of these tools which are there, which is more an IT centered tool, basically in terms of systems managers, config. we really see these tools are getting really go to the next level, because today people don't want to really go and operationally manage something. It has to get automated, it has to get autonomous. An architect role is like when a support request comes, why is this request coming in, where is there an architect refactoring to be done, is there something which you can do better to resize this so that it can be better. So that's another place where we can look at. So a day of life of an architect typically might be like characteristically very messy sometimes. Second, he has to run these tools continuously. Third, marketplace is very important. Fourth, knowing overall the services is very important. Fifth is operationally trying to look at what's going wrong and making it into a strategy is also equally important. Thank you all, and we'll see you in the next lesson.